Hello, everyone, and welcome to our A-Plan monthly webinar series. This is a series of open to the public, free 1-hour trainings on topics that are important to us. Sometimes we have guest speakers from outside our A-Plan community, and sometimes, like today, we are very lucky to have coaches from within our team bring their expertise to all of you. And today, Dr. Amy Chiang, who's been with us since very, very early on, 2019, I think, Amy, was it?
Yes.
Just wrote a book called Survival Identity, and you'll be hearing more about that today, including how to order a copy if you'd like. But this theme that I know so many of you were attracted to, why smart leaders keep repeating the same patterns even when they know better. And I know I sure experienced that in my own leadership. As is our norm, Amy will start us off with a centering activity to help you arrive fully, and then we'll dig into this important topic. So, Amy, so grateful to have had you on our team. I cannot believe it's been 7 years, and really proud of your book and excited for this session. Over to you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for being here. So what we're going to look at today is one of the most persistent puzzles that I see in leaders, people who know exactly what needs to change and they have real insight and real commitment, but still find themselves repeating the same pattern under pressure. We're not going to just talk about why it happens, but I want you to leave with language for sure, but also with somewhere to start. And let's go to the next slide. So a little bit about me, I hold a doctorate in human and organizational systems from Fielding Graduate University, a dual master's in organizational change management and in human development. I spent the last 20 years in change management consulting, working with leaders through the most demanding transitions in their industries, Fortune 100 companies across technology, financial services, and energy. And my doctoral work was specifically about how the experiences of oppression get habituated into the body. So merging the fields of transformative learning, somatics, and decolonizing pedagogy, and what it takes to move beyond these ways of being to one that is more intentional, conscious, and from a place of essential self. And a little bit about me specifically, I was raised in a Chinese family. Imagine a Chinese patriarch where my dad didn't really think girls had a whole lot to contribute. My family landed in the US in 1982, and I grew up in an immigrant household in Southern California during the 80s and the 90s. And that context shaped a lot of how I would navigate the years to come. So I come to this work not just as a researcher in the academic sense. I was case study number one when it came to understanding my own survival identity. And I grew up as a woman, as an immigrant, and then in my working life, a first-timer in corporate settings, which then I think in retrospect reflects our working class background. And all of these had their own messages about who was seen, who was counted, and ultimately who belonged. And I saw it as a challenge to find ways to adapt so that I too could feel seen, counted, and ultimately belong. So we're going to do a centering exercise. So before we go any further, let's just take a moment together and do some breathing together. And go ahead and just drop in and feel your body. I will do this along with you. And just notice. Are you holding any energy in your body right now? So I want you to check your shoulders, your jaw, your hands, your neck, and your back. Sometimes we hold tension in different areas of our body, and that might be a signal for something. And we're going to talk about that today because the body is a place of intelligence and wisdom. Okay. So with that, take a couple more breaths, and we're going to come right back in. All right. So A lot of the time, when we talk about why leaders don't change or cannot, they keep repeating the same patterns. Here are some explanations that we've been told for a long time to explain why we can't do that thing that we intend to do, right? We've heard many things around motivation, or it's an issue around willpower, or it's around mindset. I'm sure you've probably seen some social media about like mindset hacks and things like that. These are the explanations that we hear the most often, and they're not wrong exactly. I think that they're just explaining things at the wrong level, they're operating at the wrong level. So it's like they describe the gap without fully explaining it. A person saying that a person needs more motivation is just that it's a different way of saying they just need to do more of the thing that they are already not doing. It renames the problem, but it doesn't really touch what's going on underneath. As a change management consultant, I usually typically focus on strategy and communications and training plans, and for some population engagement work, right? But none of that really touches the essential human experience. We're taught to treat resistance as something to be managed. But if someone is resistant to change, what's actually happening underneath? What I found across 20 years of practice and my doctoral research is this: when someone knows better and still doesn't do differently under pressure, what's in the way isn't up here, right, in the head. It's not a mindset problem. It's operating at the level of identity and nervous system. And that requires a fundamentally different kind of intervention. So if it's not motivation, if it's not willpower, and if it's not mindset, then where does the pattern actually live? Let's talk about it. Okay, so here's the physiological grounding for what I'm about to share. Patterns formed under high pressure conditions aren't just stored cognitively, they're stored somatically in the body and in your nervous system. Researchers like van der Kolk, Porges, and Strozzi, the somatic literature has really been unambiguous on this. Under perceived threat, the amygdala fires faster than the prefrontal cortex can process. And the nervous system doesn't distinguish between a physical threat and a professional one. A performance review, a conflict with a peer, a moment of high visibility, the body responds the way it learned to respond when we were little. In a lot of cases, the pattern is automatic, which means by the time you're ready to make the new choice, the pattern has already run. Awareness is necessary, but it's insufficient. Awesome. I just saw a quick comment out there. Thank you. Yes, we're checking out The Body Keeps a Score. Excellent book. All right, so what layer are we talking about? I'm calling it the survival identity. The survival identity is the version of yourself you built to keep yourself safe under pressure. It comes from an environment, usually when we're young, when rules about who belonged and who didn't were made very clear to us. And sometimes those rules were outwardly stated. More often they were transmitted through the atmosphere, through subtle messaging. Who got to feel seen and who got to feel counted? Whose interests were kept at the center? So we concocted a strategy, and it worked. It got us to where we are now. But the problem is that it was built for a younger version of us, navigating the dynamics of power at that time in conditions that no longer exist. And notice, you're still running the old programming. So there are three things to hold as we work with this framework. The survival identity is not a flaw. I'm saying that it's an adaptation. So whatever pattern you're running, it made sense back when. It was, in its original context, exactly the right thing to do. And secondly, it's not a choice. It activates before conscious decision-making can intervene. So you're not failing to try, the pattern just runs faster because it's automatic. And third, it's not permanent. And with the right conditions, these identity level patterns can be updated. And that's what we're actually doing when change holds. Why do I call it identity and not just a habit or anything else? Because we're taught to believe that this is genuinely who we are. Like when you have conversations with friends, you just go, oh, this is just the way I am. It's not personality. It's not just the way you are. And we're about to explore why. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So I'm going to get your help here in the chat prompt. I'm going to ask you to write a word in the chat prompt, and I'll give you the prompt in just a second. So think about the last time you faced a truly high stakes moment. Maybe it looked like speaking up when it would have mattered. Or did you delegate the work instead of doing it yourself when you really just wanted to do it yourself? Or did you stop yourself from another round of analysis when the work was pretty thorough? Or did you actually just go through another, block of work? These patterns keep arising, right? So I just want to, instead of talking about the what happened, I want you to notice what your body did in that moment. What did you feel? Again, the body is a site of intelligence. What did you feel in your body when this moment of like, I was about to speak up in the meeting, but what happened? Like, where did you feel it in your body? So I'm going to try to find the chat box. There it is. Nice. My stomach tightened, tightness in my chest. I'm going to go over to the screen because I can read all the responses better. Your fists. Excellent. Shoulders tightened, chest. Excellent. Excellent. Disembodied. Nice. Nice. Good. We have some self-aware people here on this call. I'm really happy to see it. More heat in the body. Yeah, right. Exactly right. So it's really excellent to notice what's happening in the body in these moments. And I want you to hold that while we talk about how the survival identity forms. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. Butterflies in the stomach, for sure. So before we get to archetypes, I just want to spend a few minutes on something that often gets skipped. When we talk about why we get stuck, the conversation almost always lands on family as the primary level of explanation. And I can say I'm a certain way because my mom did this or my dad did this, and those are true. That happened too, right? And that's not wrong, but I think that it's incomplete because the family doesn't exist in a vacuum. The family exists inside of systems. You weren't just learning how to survive the particular dynamics of your household. You were also learning how to survive the systems you inhabited as a family. So survival identities don't develop around arbitrary fears. They develop more around core human needs. Your need for safety, belonging, agency, that feeling that your sense of actions have consequence and impact, or a feeling of competence, or the desire for predictability. Just think back to your own childhood. What did it take to feel safe? This is the fundamental architecture of what it means to be human, and the strategies we formed around them formed because they were the most available means of getting our needs met. It was entirely legitimate. But here's what we don't always discuss. The context is never neutral. Culture, gender, race, sexual orientation, immigrant status, economic class, capitalism, which only cares about your productivity, not your rest, patriarchy, which has very specific assumptions about who gets to take up space and who learns repeatedly to make themselves smaller, religious institutions organized around obedience and shame, white supremacy, caste systems. So these are not theoretical. They're not just in books, textbooks, right? They shape the specific conditions which they They shape the specific conditions in which a child develops their survival identity, just as much as the dynamics of the household that shape them. So when an entire culture teaches a particular group of people that visibility is dangerous or that belonging requires a certain kind of performance, the individuals in that group develop survival identities that look from the outside like personality, but they're not personality. They're intelligent adaptations to real conditions where there was a power difference. And when you were a kid, there was absolutely a power difference. Okay. All right. So with that, let's look at the 5 most common patterns. Any questions, actually, before we go? Okay, we'll go on. 5 archetypes. So these are intended to help you recognize your patterns. They're not diagnostic labels. They're not boxes to put people into, so don't do that. But they are patterns in how we show up when the pressure is on. A lot of leadership reason, for some reason, skips the fact that there is a power differential in the workplace. Like we're all equals with unique personalities that come from the sky, right? Somehow methods like DISC and MBTI and even Enneagram completely ignore the fact that we were shaped by conditions of unequal power. And you were doing your best to keep yourself safe. So as I walk through these archetypes, I just want to notice what lands for you, or whether it's a colleague or maybe even something you just recognize in yourself. And I'll tell you this, if the one that makes you a little uncomfortable is probably yours. Okay, so here we go. So there's 5 of them, and I'm going to go into more detail after this, but I'm just going to go over the 5 at a high level. So for the controller, uncertainty feels safe, for instance. The analyzer, when the risk of being wrong is present. The people pleaser, when the conflict or disapproval threatens connection. The disruptor, when authority or constraint triggers a protective challenge. And the avoider, when visibility itself feels dangerous. So I want to mention that these are not meant to be absolute. You're not 100% one way. I think we tend to be combinations depending on the context, with one being a primary and one being a secondary. But the goal in our next few slides is to listen to what feels the most true for you. So the controller. The controller forms when things go wrong and had real consequences. Maybe you were subject to blame, criticism, or abandonment. Taking control became the way to survive, and it worked until the context changed. It shows up now as difficulty delegating, or over-preparing for everything, or having a hand in how everything is done. Usually, underneath the control is the fear wearing a facade of competence. And I'll name this for the sake of saying it. Some of these qualities actually look like leadership, which is why they stick around. So for this person, the question worth asking is, what would need to be true for you to trust this to someone else? Okay, you guys ready for the next one? The analyzer. The analyzer forms in context when mistakes were costly. Analysis became the way to stay ahead of exposure. Being right feels like protection. It shows up now as analysis paralysis, decisions deferred indefinitely, perfectionism that delays completion. So you could see the qualities here, difficulty with good enough. The question worth asking yourself is, what would you decide if you already had enough information? Anyone uncomfortable yet? We're going to go to the next one. So the people pleaser. The people pleaser forms when belonging depended on keeping others comfortable, saying yes, staying agreeable, avoiding conflict. That became the way to stay connected and avoid loss. It shows up now as a chronic yes saying, feedback delivered so softly it doesn't even land, or absorbing other people's emotions at a personal cost. Here's something worth naming. Let's say you are a people pleaser and you tend to be that version that tends to go up and beyond, let's say, right? Someone benefits from your over delivering and your inability to set a boundary. And you're usually the one left with the burnout. So that's something to keep in mind as a cost of this particular archetype. The question worth asking is, what would you say if the relationship could handle full honesty? Okay. The disruptor. The disruptor emerged in systems where following the rules meant harm or invisibility, and challenging authority became the way to assert identity and protect integrity. It shows up now as an automatic resistance to instructions, contrarianism in group settings, creative energy that burns down structures faster than it builds them. This person doesn't trust systems. And the question worth asking yourself, if you identify with this, is, what are you protecting by pushing back here? All right, we have one more. The avoider. The avoider formed when visibility carried risk, criticism, envy, becoming a target. So staying small or absent became the way to stay safe. It shows up now as a quietly opting out, like of a, let's say your boss or your manager asks you to do a presentation. You're like, how can I not do that? Or even a promotion conversation, or a visible ask, like something that's going to make you more visible than you're comfortable with. Somehow there's always a way to just get out of doing it. The question to ask yourself here is, what would you do if staying invisible wasn't an option? Okay, so we're going to launch a poll. Which one of these archetypes feel the most like you? Go ahead, Tayo. I think you have the ability to launch polls.
It should be showing up for me. It's in my upper right. It's a purple poll. Yep. Answers are starting to come in. Are you able to see that, Amy?
No. No.
Click along the top. There's a purple, and I can summarize them too. Everyone says that it says everybody can see the results. It's a little purple box with lines in it. So far, we've got 8 people pleasers, a lot of people pleasers, 2 controllers, 1 analyzer, 2 disruptors, and 2 avoiders.
Nice.
Oh, and Sayoko, 2 for 1, right? We can have both. I really relate to that too.
We could definitely have both. Right. So we definitely know what our tendency is under pressure. We know what we tend to do when the heat is on, as it were, right? Let's see. So again, no one is purely one of these. You're usually a blend, one with a primary, one with a secondary, depending on the situation and who's in the room. It's interesting, right? Because sometimes we call some of these ambition, right? You know, this looks like someone who's really driven and really together and all those things, you know. I just think it's, from the outside, it looks like having high standards. It looks like having initiative. But the question really is, so as you understand these archetypes that live in you, what does it feel like from the inside? Because does it feel like pressure and something clamping down on you? Or does it feel like something that's actually genuinely expansive? And I think that's a good question to ask yourself when we're in these situations of great pressure. Okay, so I'm going to now go to the next slide, and this time, I would like you to use the reaction button to raise your hand if any of those made you feel uncomfortable. Yeah. 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 Nice. Nice. Good. Notice what it felt like. Did it feel like recognition? Did it feel like, oh my God, why does she have access to my journal? Like, what's this? What's going on here? Um, yeah, so thank you so much for raising your hands. These are strategies we've deployed for a long time without ever talking about them. And sometimes they run so deep that we don't even realize how much a part of us that they've become. Okay, so let's talk about what it looks like when the survival identity goes unexamined. Okay, so I would say here's a very, thesis statement. Here we go. The most expensive thing in an organization is an unexamined leader. What do I mean by that? I want to show you what it looks like when it goes completely unexamined in someone with real authority, because the cost doesn't stay contained with the person that carries it. So let's talk about our leader, Richard, who spent 30 years building a company. Richard is a controller. He is decisive, effective, and admired in his industry, right? It looks like leadership. But over time, his team learned something that they were never told directly. Don't bring him problems. Bring him solutions shaped around what he's probably going to say yes to. If he doesn't know about it initially, you don't give him the heads up, he might start to have an opinion about how the work is done later, right? This is not a dysfunctional team around him. It delivers. And from the outside, it looks like strong leadership. But what it actually is also a system that has learned to perform around Richard's nervous system. The leader is usually the last person in the room to see it. So I'm really glad a lot of you guys see your own patterns. That's really awesome. But sometimes these leaders, they don't always have that level of self-awareness. So notice how also his nervous system, let's just call it his survival identity, it also then triggers other people to be in their survival identity as well in response. So here's why people go along with it, right? It's not just conflict avoidance. Oftentimes, the people around this person are afraid to tell him that he shows up a certain way and how it impacts people. Why is that? Because the workplace is also not neutral. Leadership literature has forgotten to explicitly say that there's a power differential between the organization and the person who depends on it for their paycheck. So much like when you were little, there was a power differential that was made very clear to you, and you created your strategies. You employed a strategy that to get your needs met and to keep yourself safe. And much like your childhood, you're also doing this in our work setting, right? What are we left with? We're locked in a way of working that's basically based in fear. And my question to you all is, how much growth is possible here if that is what's happening? And this workplace continues in this orchestration of a pattern until it gets interrupted. So just curious, does this seem familiar to anybody in their workplace or places that they have worked with in the past? We don't have to call out our work settings right now. Thank you, Anjali. I appreciate it. Okay. So what's the lesson? You can't think your way out of a pattern that your nervous system is running. Your body has to be part of that change and not just the mind. That's the lesson here, okay? So something that our attendees can take away today, one, practice. It's not a mindset trick. So first of all, let's talk about that moment where, we have that initial pull, right? That initial feeling of pressure. What do you notice in your body? Again, your jaw, your shoulders, your chest. Notice it first, as soon as you feel it, instead of after the fact, right? The point is to interrupt it before you actually go through a full automatic, action, right? I imagine that it's something that just goes so fast, it's hard to slow down, but it's really about just tuning into your body and having that be a place of intelligence for you. And maybe as your second step, name the archetype that's running. And sometimes naming the archetype also helps interrupt the autopilot aspect, if even briefly, right? If you go, oh my God, that's me being a people pleaser again. Oh man, I gotta, be careful that I don't go automatically into overperformance and, all that stuff, right? Then 3, ask a question. So these are actually coaching questions, very appropriate for the A-Plan coaching audience. Each archetype has one, right? So for instance, if you are a controller, maybe the question that's appropriate for you is, what would need to be true for you to trust this to someone else? If you're a people pleaser, maybe the question is, what would you say if the relationship could handle full honesty? Okay, so this is something that you could try and really just try to interrupt the automatic nature of our nervous systems and how we respond. Okay, any questions here? Okay, so I'm going to go on to the next slide. So noticing is the doorway. Again, like I've mentioned before, awareness is important, but not sufficient. So for a new way of being to actually take hold, it has to move through 5 phases. So fog, which is a different word for disorientation, right? You have to name that stuck place for yourself. What's that pattern that you keep seeing in yourself? The second phase is observe, seeing the pattern in action. Where did it come from? What need was it trying to meet? Oh, I see a question, Coletta. Give me a sec. Yes, exactly. Okay. So observe, again, where did it come from? What need was it trying to meet? Reconnect is returning to who you are beneath the pattern. What's the most essential expression of your purpose and values underneath the strategy? So as you can see, what I'm actually claiming here is that we have been locked in our conditioning, but there's a version of us that wants to emerge and wants to be visible, but it's been covered up because we are locked in our automatic reaction and responses. And if we're able to actually access that version of us that's underneath, what else is possible, right? Move is really testing these new ways of being when under pressure. So imagine a lot of models just stop right at let's just say at the middle where it's just an insight and ta-da, you're fixed, right? But that's really not enough. I think, at least I'm saying this as a change management person, we really need practice in this new way of being and inhabiting in order to feel like we have competence in this new way of self, right? So usually when you're trying on a new way of being, that's where imposter syndrome comes up because you haven't practiced this new way of being long enough to feel confident in it yet. So this phase is about getting reps. So you have choice the next time that you feel like you're under pressure. And lastly, anchor, building the environment and relationships that support this new way of being so it holds. Another way of saying this is operationalizing this new way of being into your life. Sometimes it looks like creating support around you, so that they look forward to that new way of being in you, and just a way of understanding how to be in this new environment, not just you and white knuckling it into this new way of being in the world, as much as how do I set up this space in this environment so that it supports this version of me, so that I don't end up retreating into my old patterns over and over again. Okay, so that's the anchor. I think the move and the anchor phase is really what most change approaches skip. And without them, awareness doesn't become anything durable. Okay, so this is the model of change that I'm proposing. So the next slide, you are not lacking in commitment, right? You've just been running an old program in a new situation. So why does this matter at this point in time? This moment is not like any moment in history, right? Our systems, including our economic systems, ecological systems, and institutional systems, are burning down actively all around us. And we don't need more leaders who've perfected performing the version of competence from the old world. We need leaders who understand what it means to be human, who recognize the adaptations that they have and how it has kept them small and safe. And we want to show up in this moment as the persons that we're meant to be. So those are the leaders that we will want to follow into the next iteration of this planet, and the leaders that are capable of carrying us into the futures that we actually deserve. Okay, so I'm gonna just go back. Any questions? Any questions?
We've
All
got
right,
a
let me
few.
take a look.
Yeah. Coletta,
Let's take a look.
are you in a position you want to voice over yours? I think it's such a great one. And then we'll go next to Adam, or Coletta, I can read yours aloud, but we'd love to have your voices in the room. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Amy. That was really insightful. And thank you, Sarah, for this opportunity. Yeah, so I was just wondering, being a people pleaser, when you've observed it, you can sense or actually know that this relationship, whether it's a work relationship or whatever, is not really ready for that honesty. Mm-hmm. How then do you handle things without people pleasing?
I would say this is kind of why we all need to be on the journey together, not just ourselves as, let's just say, an individual in relationship to others. We all have to be on the journey of learning our tendencies and why it is that's necessary. So as far as the honesty is concerned, I wonder if there's something to do, at least percents, to at least start into that direction. I wonder if it's possible to at least start moving into the direction of what feels like honesty for you, even if it's not 100% aggressive. Here's my stance and here's my boundary and here's all those things. I wonder would be possible if we could at least move towards that direction, so that we can create the space for ourselves to feel safe to have that conversation. Is that helpful?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to navigate, right? But I don't know. I think underneath that conditioning, there's a version of us that wants to emerge, and I just feel like on some level, you're also advocating for that version of you that wants to show up.
Beautiful.
How do we know whether we are sorry, go ahead, Sarah. I should let you read.
No, that's okay. Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, how do we know that we're operating from an archetype, a version of ourselves that have been shaped by the power dynamics or from the true self? Are there indicators? I mean, I think, so basically the question is, what's the difference between conditioning and true self and authentic self, which is, I think, a very perennial question. Like I mentioned that pressure, like, does it feel like, if you're being in a certain energy, does it feel like pressure on you, or does it feel like expansion energy? And there's something about, like, am I in my energy of purpose, or am I doing this because I feel like I have to? And I wonder if, like, being aware of how we feel in our bodies would help us differentiate between the two. I want to go back to the forma model bit, because I did go through it a little bit fast. Usually in the reconnect phase is when you start to be more in touch with the who you are underneath. It's trying to help you connect with your purpose, your values, how you want to spend your energy, how you want to inhabit space. And really, like, usually in this phase is really an opportunity to really get to know the authentic self that's been kind of been quieted, right, for many years, and for some people, decades. And then to be able to feel the difference of the energy between the have to and I'm this people pleaser version of me, versus a different energy of, like, oh, this is what I feel like I was put on this planet to do. There's a different energy between the two. Thank you, Santa Linda. Okay. Any other questions before we go forward? Yeah, let's talk about it.
Frank's hand is up.
Oh.
Not just because he identified, but it came up since then. Is that right, Frank? Do you have a question?
Well, it also looks like Jody might be ahead of me in the queue.
Yeah.
I think Jody and Astrid's hands were up responding
because of the exercise.
Okay, great. Thank you for this presentation, Amy. It's wonderful. I guess the question and I love how you resolve on, we need more kind of humanity in our leadership. I think a lot about that. But but I also feel to some degree we're kind of stuck in this system where we have a lot of leaders who are perpetuating the fire, and part of me worries that we're getting, in a sense, that's just creating almost stronger presence of those patterns. And I'm just kind of curious, do you have observations or thoughts or things that you're seeing in the world where, like, how do we break organizations out of those systems when they're in situations of such power over so much of our lives?
That's a big question. So I'm going to say that it's important for people to understand where their power lives within them. I think when we work in these ecosystems, when we work in these, when we occupy these environments, we forget that we have power too. And the ability to, maybe find a way to voice concerns if something feels imbalanced. I know within A Plan, we care about surveys a lot and trying to get people to provide feedback to us and that sort of thing. And ultimately, yeah, it is a reflection of the direction that the leader takes, but it's just I don't want to say just know your power, but it is a matter of, like, how do people who are understanding that things could be different maybe come together and make their interests more visible so that we are able to influence and disrupt our current ways of doing things. Sorry, I answered your question with a question.
So great,
That's probably
Amy.
the best we can do, but thank you.
Yeah.
And persist, because Amy has worked side by side with me, and it's not always easy to receive constructive feedback as a leader. And I'm just grateful, Amy, for your persistence and reminders that something better can emerge. I want to take Deborah's question, and then Anjali and Sunny will go to you. But Deborah says these archetype responses can be assets in the right situations, right?
Right.
Is it when they're causing problems that they need to be tempered? How do we know when to change it?
It's almost like there's a cost to the over being of that version of you, right? It's almost like if you are so much of a people pleaser that you are exhausted, but you're like, I don't know why I keep doing this thing. When I sit across from clients, sometimes I could see that there is something there about like, I want to be something new or different, but I don't know how to do this any other way because I've been this way for so long, right? So it's really like, how do we say, like, where's the point in which the cost is too high and it's no longer how we want to be in certain situations? You're right. There are certain scenarios where it makes sense to take control. There are situations where it makes sense to be supportive, right? And or other patterns, right? To basically have those as good skills that we have developed. But that's not all we are. And I think what I'm trying to get at with the word identity is that sometimes we forget that this is just an adaptation and it's not, and we actually think it's our identity. We think it's actually our essential personality when it's not. And so I'm just trying to like break us free from that so that we know that there's more than this for us.
Yeah. And I'll say too, with Deborah's point, and then we'll go to you, Anjali, when the team is saying, hey, this isn't working, I know for me as CEO, even though I teach this work and I've been educated, my initial response is often defensiveness, because it can be hard to see, oh, me being so controlling or me being disruptive is harming this team. And ultimately, that's a gift to have that feedback reflected back to me, so that I can evolve to the next version of myself as a leader. So I think sometimes it's not always showing up as I'm uncomfortable, but my team's uncomfortable. And that's a hard one. I don't know. I mean, if you have any thoughts on that, how do we know if it's stuff being projected onto us as leaders or if it's really our work to need to change? But for me, I kind of think, well, if the system's not working, I want to evolve. Yeah.
It takes a self-aware leader to want to go on this journey. I think that's probably an important thing to say. And not everybody is ready for this journey, but it's important to at least, what we're doing here is we're trying to create awareness of our unconscious patterning, right? So what make the unconscious conscious, and what are we doing through that? It's really about like, okay, could this way of being be affecting my team in a way that feels more like cost instead of additive, right? It feels more harmful than positive? And I think being able to be open to receiving feedback allows that dialogue to occur so that people can all come to an awareness around their survival identities.
Anjali.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think you might have answered some of my part of my question, but I was curious, Amy, that when I love the way you presented this. I've seen it in different ways, in somatics and other things, but I was wondering, like, you call it a survival identity, and then you have this beautiful model. Is there a point where you realize that, like, I know most of us are trauma informed, we're not therapists, but you talk to a leader about, like, they may know the why, but they're not connecting it to what's happening in the present. So there might be the map of fight, flight, freeze, appease, which I see maps to your beautiful model as well. I mean, when you do you have any thoughts on that?
As far as how to bring awareness to a leader?
Yeah, or how you connect the two, the trauma response to the conditioned response or the leadership response.
I just don't talk about trauma.
Yeah.
I learned long ago to not go into the word trauma because it makes people feel not good, right? And we end up going into a different direction in the conversation around trauma. So that's why I tend to take it more in the lens of human development and adaptations. And that's why my emphasis is about adaptations and not about trauma. As a person adapted, they were doing their best that they could at age 8. Like I was, like you were, we all were. So you were learning, and it creates the opening and the possibility for us to now try something new because we're now going to learn something new. We acknowledge what we were trying to take care of before. We're still even taking care of things now, but we don't have to be that version of ourselves forever.
And I like the way you connected to values. And
Yeah.
the brilliant model. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Lots of questions, Amy.
Lots of questions. Lots of questions. All right. So I think I've got to close because we only have a few minutes left. But thank you so much for the curiosity. So here's what I would love if this landed for you today. And I'm going to try to answer the questions after 10 o'clock if you guys want to stick around. If you're in a position to bring this to your organization, I'd love to design a workshop or a short series so your teams can get conscious around their patterns together, and not just for the sake of insight, so that you have, the goal is to have a shared language, the same as we did today. And and the reason I say series is that it's not just a single session. It's not just one and done, right? Forma is a 5-step, 5-phase journey. And the leaders who actually want to change usually are the ones who keep working the model and keep practicing that new way of being over time. And like I mentioned, they operationalize this work so that it becomes part of their new way of working. And on the side, I've been building something called Transforma to support this work, which I'll get to in a second. So if a workshop sounds right to you, please reach out to Sarah so she can connect all of us. The book, if you want to start before we ever even get a workshop on a calendar, everything we covered today, plus the 5 full archetype profiles, are in my book, Survival Identity: The Hidden Patterns Running Your Work, Leadership, and Life. And you could find that at survivalidentity.com. You could also find the ebook version on Amazon and other distributors of ebooks. I want to just say, I'm currently working with other organizations on this, and Transforma, which is a technology, is what's holding things together between the touch points. So Transforma is an app that's built on the Forma methodology. So you could explore your archetype and have work between sessions, and leaders have somewhere to go to continue with their work instead of just having the insight fade away between the time we're in the room together. And that's what helps make the insight stick. I'm offering my QR code to my LinkedIn in case you want to get connected on LinkedIn. I'm going to switch now. Here we go. And so I want to say thank you, A-Plan, for hosting this conversation, and thank you for each of you for showing up in the way that you did today. Here's what I think is possible from this work. You can stop performing competence for someone else's approval. You can make decisions based on what you actually think. And you could disagree with someone without spending the next hour managing how they feel about it. So my contact information is up on the screen if you want to keep going. And thank you again, everyone. Thank you all for being a part of this conversation. And I'm happy to continue answering questions while we're here.
Yes. And for those who do need to leave, I'll just say thank you, Amy, so much for your leadership, for your decades of research. I love that you said you were research subject number 1. And it's clear how much wisdom you bring to this work through the combination of your own experience, yourself, your coaching work, and all your research. So we're so lucky to have you on our team. Thank you. Thank you. And for those who are able to stay, thank you, Amy, for graciously offering more time for questions. Santa Linda.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks all.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for taking the time.
I have about 2 minutes. I know there was someone else who had their hand. Are they staying?
Let's hear it, Santa Linda.
Yeah, the word, no, this is fabulous. I'm working with the CEO and her team, and if this doesn't nail it, I don't know what does. But either way, the point is that the word trauma, and I was trained as a psychologist, if I hear it one more time, I'm about to vomit. It's like everybody's, and there's small T's and big T's, and yes, there are nations, and these are tribal nations who've had trauma for generations. And this person will use trauma, and I'm like, yeah, you're coming from trauma. You're right. And you're creating trauma again and again and again. So when someone is resistant and again, because it is adaptive behavior, you're trying to let them know it's not who they are and they're struggling. What would you respond, or how can you get that person off the trauma trail?
Trauma's not all you are, right?
It's a shield, at this point.
It is. It's not all that you are. You were a being before you came into this physical body, meant to have experiences so that you understand the nature of human experience. So if that's the case, then you're having a human experience, but it's not all you are. I don't know. I mean, I'm not your client, but like,
but these are thoughts, and it informs my thinking. So thank you. This thing has been real quick question too. Did you create, or have you created a any kind of assessment inventory, or sort of like the discs that people can take to work through this?
It's in my app. Yeah. We could talk about it, but like I think
supposed to test, and I apologize, but I just
gotta go
out of capacity. I have a coaching, but I was out of capacity. So to access your app, what do I do now?
Okay, we'll talk offline, but you could find it at app.transforma.me.
Thank you.
We'll also send it with the recording, Santa Linda. So.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you, Santa. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Amazing. And you look amazing. I don't know you like this. We're usually all.
Oh my gosh.
Bye, sweetie.
Bye, Santa Linda. Okay, anybody else? Any last questions before we go?
Yeah, we've got Lolita.
Hi. Thanks so much.
Lolita.
Just a lovely presentation. I was really drawn to the fact that you mentioned how do you feel in your body. And my question is, when you said you can't only focus on the mindset, right? So my question is around, can the solution be part of switching how your body feels, and then you get the mindset shift, right? So it's like, feel your body and work on changing that state, that nervous system state. And from there, your true self emerges. So using the body as the solution rather than going into the mind right away. So just
I think
curious
that's
about
fair. I mean, I think that's fair. I think it ends up, you might face, so I've actually personally experienced where you like, I'm trying to feel happy, even though you're really upset, you're really upset, right? So I don't want to create a situation that feels like contradiction and what feels like truth for like the person. But I do think that maybe kind of like settling the energy down and understanding the source or the location of that feeling is a starting point to know that this is not like just everything, right? I had a whole text conversation with someone where she was just like, I'm so angry, and what she was going on and on. I'm like, I think you get what you focus on. And then throughout the course of the conversation, she realized like there's a reason for a gratitude practice. There's a reason for certain things, in order to help us unlock from the state that we're in, and then I think that's the point, is to just know that it's a state, but it's not all you are. And it's and there's more that you could experience if you give yourself the permission to experience other things too.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm a coach and a Reiki practitioner, and I do packaging with both. And I find sometimes you get results from just going into the body and staying there to help shift the consciousness to a place that's more open and expansive rather than contracted. And it's the same person, right? So we all have the same. So just curious about other work related to the body.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm really grateful for you all for being here today. And I think we are good to close.
Yes, thank you, Amy. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And stay tuned. We'll be promoting our next monthly webinar via the newsletter. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, all.
Bye, everyone.